All right, so today we're going to dive into something pretty fascinating. It's really changing the game and how we build stuff, especially, big commercial construction projects.
Yeah, I mean it's a whole new world out there with these robots and drones coming onto construction sites.
It's definitely not the image that pops into your head when you think construction, hard hats and tool belts, right?
Exactly.
But, our listeners are savvy. They're ahead of the curve. They want to know what's happening right now, not just some far off sci-fi future.
Absolutely.
So in this deep dive, we're going deep into the tech that's actually being used right now, the real impact it's having, like, the bottom line and what this all means for, the industry going forward.
Yeah, so we'll be looking at drones, of course, the eye in the sky, gathering data, and then all sorts of robots, doing things like laying bricks, marking out the site, even demolition. And get this, even running those huge pieces of equipment we see on construction sites, plus pretty sophisticated site monitoring and even rebar tying. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, it's surprising. You think construction, and it's like this very kind of, old school industry, but the robotics thing isn't like some brand new thing,
No,
right?
not at all. I mean, it's
Yeah.
definitely picking up speed now, but the seeds were planted a while back.
Yeah.
We can trace this back to the 80s, actually, with folks experimenting with robotics in construction. Even back then, Japan was really ahead of the curve back then.
So it's been a gradual evolution, huh, leading up to this moment.
Exactly.
And the thing is, it's not about, robots taking over and kicking everyone off the job site, right?
No, no, definitely not. I think the real story here is how this tech is actually working alongside human crews,
Yeah.
making them more efficient and more effective.
Yeah, and that leads to some pretty important outcomes, right? Like, from what I understand, fewer accidents, getting things built faster, and just overall a safer environment for the workers.
Absolutely. I mean, those are huge wins right there.
Absolutely. So let's get into the specifics here. Let's talk about what these ground-based robots are actually doing, boots on the ground. What's a real standout example that's making a difference right now?
Okay, so a really cool example is in bricklaying. You heard about this Hadrian X robot? It's an Australian company.
Hadrian X? No, I haven't. What's so special about it?
Well, for one thing, it's mounted on a truck, so it's mobile, right?
Yeah.
And it has this crazy long reach, like 30 meters. But here's the kicker. It can lay all the bricks for an entire house in less than a day. And not just slap them together. We're talking millimeter precision, like way more consistent than humans can do at that speed. So you can see how this isn't just, speeding up bricklaying. It's like rewriting the rules of how long it takes to build a house.
A whole house in a day. That's mind-blowing. And what about, the waste you always see at construction sites? Piles of leftover materials. Does the Hadrian X create mountains of brick rubble?
Actually, that's another cool thing. It actually cuts the bricks to the exact size needed right there on the spot. So that minimizes waste big time, which is great for the environment and, of course, saves money too.
Yeah.
If you think about it, this could be huge for like disaster relief. Quickly rebuilding homes after a hurricane and earthquake. That kind of speed and accuracy could be a real game changer.
Yeah, that's a really powerful thought. Okay, so we've got robot bricklayers. What other types of robots are proving their worth out there on the job site?
So let's talk about that very first stage of a project, marking out the site where walls and utilities and everything will go. That's traditionally a super manual, time-consuming job. Guys bending over, measuring with tape, snapping chalk lines. It's pretty old school.
Yeah, lots of room for error there too, right?
Exactly, and that's where these layout robots are coming in. Like HP's got this thing called site print.
Site print. So instead of the guys with the tape measures, what does this robot do?
So site print basically prints the entire building plan directly onto the concrete slab of the construction site. It just goes around the site autonomously, marking out all the points and lines super accurately. So it speeds up the layout process, eliminates a lot of potential human errors, and, way less strain on the workers' bodies. And get this, because it's often connected to the cloud, any updates to the plans can be implemented like that, instantly.
That's really slick. All right,
Yeah.
so layout is covered. What about some of the really tough, dangerous jobs like demolition, breaking stuff down?
Yeah, well, even in demolition, robots are making their mark.
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing called the Brock 500.
Brock 500, what's that all about?
It's a powerful demolition robot. But here's the thing. It's remote controlled, so you can have an operator standing at a safe distance controlling it. This is really useful in tight spaces or dangerous environments where you wouldn't want to send a human in with a jackhammer. The benefits are obvious, right? Increased safety and speed because you're not putting workers at risk, and the demolition work gets done much faster.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that translates to real savings too, right? Less time, less risk, lower insurance costs, I imagine.
Exactly, yeah. big financial benefits for construction companies.
Makes sense. So we've seen robots doing the heavy lifting. Literally, what about operating those massive machines you always see on construction sites? The bulldozers and excavators, can robots handle those too?
They can, and they are. There are companies like Built Robotics that are retrofitting existing heavy equipment to make them semi-autonomous. So think of it like having cruise control on your car, but for a bulldozer.
So it can kind of drive itself.
In a way, yeah, it can handle the repetitive stuff like grading a large area or digging trenches, while a human operator keeps an eye on things and takes over for the more complex maneuvers.
So it's not about replacing the operator entirely. It's more like giving them a superpowered assistant.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. On a big project, one operator can oversee multiple machines doing the repetitive tasks. So it really frees up manpower for the stuff that requires human judgment.
That's smart. All right, so we've covered robots doing physical labor. What about monitoring the site? Making sure everything's on track and safe.
Well, for that, you've got job site monitoring robots, and one of the coolest ones out there is Spot from Boston Dynamics.
Wait, Spot the robot dog that everyone's seen videos of online? The one that looks like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out Spot is a pretty valuable asset on a construction site. You can equip it with all sorts of sensors, cameras, even 3D scanners. And its job is to basically patrol the site autonomously, collecting data. It can go places that might be difficult or time-consuming for humans to reach regularly, squeezing into tight spots, climbing over rubble, that kind of thing.
So it's like a tireless inspector with X-ray vision.
Pretty much,
Great.
yeah. And all the data it collects gets uploaded, so project managers can get a real-time view of what's happening on the site. Spot can identify potential safety hazards, track progress, and even integrate with those BIM platforms, building information modeling, those digital models that hold all the building's info.
So it's not just about collecting pretty pictures, it's about generating really useful information for the people running the project.
Exactly. It's all about actionable intelligence.
All right, before we move on to drones, I've got one more question about ground-based robots. What about rebar tying? That seems like a pretty thankless job, but super important for any concrete structure.
Yeah, it's one of those jobs that's crucial, but also incredibly repetitive and physically demanding. Lots of bending and twisting.
Not exactly a glamorous job.
Nope, but luckily there are robots for that too. One example is Tybot, made by Advanced Construction Robotics.
Tybo, so what's its superpower?
Tybot is a rebar tying machine, and it's seriously fast. We're talking over 1,000 ties per hour. That's way faster than any human crew could manage. And because rebar is everywhere in concrete structures, bridges, buildings, you name it, this kind of speed can really shave time off these massive projects. Plus, it frees up human workers for more specialized tasks.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a huge efficiency boost. Okay, so let's shift gears now and talk about drones. We see them buzzing around construction sites all the time now, but they're doing a lot more than just taking aerial photos, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, those early drones were basically just fancy cameras in the sky, but now they've evolved into really sophisticated tools for monitoring the site, collecting data, and even making sure everything's compliant with safety regulations that give you this amazing bird's eye view and data gathering capabilities that you just couldn't get before.
And who are the big players in this drone technology? The ones really pushing the envelope for construction specifically.
Well, you got companies like Drone Deploy, Skydio, DJI Enterprise. Those are some of the leaders. They're developing some really advanced hardware and software specifically for the needs of construction projects.
So what are these drones actually doing besides, taking pretty pictures? What kind of data are they collecting?
So they're using technologies like AI and LiDAR, that laser scanning thing, to create incredibly detailed 3D maps of entire construction sites. And we're talking big areas. Some systems can map up to 400 acres in a single flight. That's a lot of ground covered quickly. And it's not just about pretty pictures. This data is used to track progress, monitor stockpiles of materials, understand the site topography. It's really valuable information for project managers.
400 acres in a single flight. That's impressive. Can you give us an example of how this data is being used to make a real difference, a real world impact?
Sure. So there was this really interesting case with a client in Texas. They were building a massive warehouse, like 1.2 million square feet. And by using drones to regularly survey the site, they actually caught some serious grading issues before they poured any concrete.
Oh, wow, that could have been a disaster.
Exactly. It would have been incredibly costly and time-consuming to fix later on. But because they caught it early, they were able to correct the problem, and it ended up saving them over $100,000.
That's a huge saving. So drones are like an early warning system.
Yeah, exactly. They can help you spot problems before they become major headaches.
That's fantastic. Okay, so we've seen how robots are changing the game on the ground, and drones are giving us a whole new perspective from the air. What does this all mean for the construction industry as a whole? The big picture.
Well, there are several key takeaways here.
Yeah.
First, as we've discussed, it means things can get built faster and with fewer accidents because robots are taking on some of the more dangerous tasks. It also has the potential to lower labor costs in the long run, and it definitely increases the precision of a lot of construction processes.
Hmm.
So, bringing it all together, the ground robots, the aerial data from drones, you can see how the whole construction process is being transformed.
Yeah, and we touched on this earlier, but labor shortage in construction is a big problem right now. How do these technologies play into that?
That's a really important point. The average age of construction workers is going up, and not enough young people are coming into the trades. So these technologies can help fill the gap. Robots can handle some of the tougher jobs, and that frees up human workers to focus on this stuff that really requires human skill and experience.
So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
And it's not about putting people out of work
Right.
either.
No, not at all. I mean, someone needs to operate these robots, maintain them, program them, and of course, interpret all the data they collect. So it's really about creating new types of jobs and
Mhm.
requiring new skills.
So the nature of construction work is changing, but it's not going away.
Exactly.
Okay, so final question looking ahead. What can we expect to see as drones and robots become even more integrated into construction?
Well, I think we're going to see a much tighter connection between drones and robots. They'll be working together seamlessly. So imagine swarms of drones feeding real-time data to autonomous machines that can then adjust their actions on the fly. It's going to be all about efficiency and flexibility.
So construction sites are going to look a lot different in the coming years.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening look at the future of construction. Thanks for sharing your insights.
My pleasure. It's an exciting time to be in this industry, that's for sure.
And for our listeners out there, as you think about this increasingly automated world we've been talking about, here's a final thought to ponder. How do you think the rise of robotics in construction will change the role of project managers and the skills that will be most in demand in the construction workforce of tomorrow? It's something to think about as this wave of technology continues to reshape the world around us.
Yeah, that's a great question for everyone to consider.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you later.